Kartik Krishnaiyer here for the Florida Squeeze. And I wanted to ask a very basic question today, which is why does Ron DeSantis hate people who own electrical vehicles, EVs? Because he's refusing to take federal funding for EV chargers. And while he's leaned into these cultural partisan issues, what he considers cultural partisan issues, in fact, what you're seeing is DeSantis abandon traditional conservatism, and we're going to do another video on this later in the week. But DeSantis abandoned traditional conservatism and effectively damaged the GOP brand in the state of Florida. Reelected by overwhelming margin in 2022, it's been one mistake after another, after another, after another in the 2 years. And I've seen this happen before where someone enters a second term. It generally hasn't happened in Florida, but it's happened in other states where someone enters a second term as a governor, overreaches, and leaves office with rock bottom approval ratings. And it feels like DeSantis is on his way to that now, to the point where I think a lot of traditional conservatives, Burkean conservatives, people who will still vote for Rick Scott, people who are Jeb Bush people, probably by 2026 are going to want to have nothing to do with DeSantis. But that's for later in the week. I have an EV. I'm an EV owner. I drive across the state regularly. So last month in August, I had to make separate trips. I live in Broward County. I had to make separate trips to Hillsborough County, to Tampa, and to Pinellas County, to St. Petersburg. And the EV infrastructure in Florida is terrible when you leave areas that are FPL areas. And I've experienced this when I've driven to Jacksonville, right? You drive to Jacksonville, there are EVs along the way in the FPL areas. And then sometimes you have to drive, if you're in Duval County, drive north to Nassau, which is an FPL area to charge. Similar thing happened to me, Tampa, St. Pete. Hillsborough County, drive back to Manatee, charge in Manatee. Pinellas County, drive across the Skyway, get to Manatee or get to Sarasota, charge there. And it's a pretty strange assumption DeSantis is making, maybe that all EV owners are left-wing, woke, cultural Democrats, people who only vote for, I don't know, maybe he thinks they only vote for people who are leftist or minorities or whatever. Because the place in the state where I see the most EVs, not Teslas, but like non-Tesla EVs, driving around is in Southwest Florida, Collier and Lee County, which happen to be FPL territory, so there are a lot of FPL chargers in those areas. But those are two of the most Republican counties in the state. In fact, Lee County is the largest county, population-wise, that gives Republicans large majorities in the state, right? Lee County is where Republicans run up margins and they can begin to offset the margins Democrats might be running up in Orange County and Broward County and in the past Palm Beach, Dade, Hillsborough, which now are kind of trending towards the Republicans. Duval also, which is trending towards the Democrats, right? So Lee County is also the place DeSantis, at least in appearances, broke his back to try and repair after Hurricane Ian, even though areas that were badly flooded in more Democratic counties and had a lot of damage, like Orange County in particular, he didn't pay any attention to. Acted like they had not even been hit by a storm. But he spent time in DeSoto, Lee, Charlotte. But there are a lot of EV owners in those counties. And just think about the economics of those counties. And Collier, lots of EV owners in Collier. And anytime I pull into a charging station in Collier or Lee, there are 3, 4, 5 other people who own a Hyundai Ioniqs like me, or Volkswagen EVs, or Mercedes, BMW EVs that are charging. So this is, again, another issue where DeSantis has made an assumption based on what bloggers and what the Twitter sphere says. This is where he's gone wrong. He made assumptions based on the noise in the Twitter sphere and not what voters in his core constituencies are thinking. And I think those voters will continue to support Rick Scott. I think those voters will continue to support Marco Rubio. I think those voters will continue to support other what they deem conservative Republicans, traditional conservative Republicans, but they're not going to support DeSantis anymore. And I think the state parks thing also does a number on it. We'll talk about that later in the week. But the state parks issue is an issue where DeSantis assumed, again, based on cultural considerations, that Republicans don't care about preservation and don't care about the environment, and it's only these woke left-wing Democrats that do. Well, in fact, and as someone who's more toward the left, I'm a little ashamed that there was a delayed reaction from people on the left, right? The people who came right out of the gate attacking DeSantis were Republicans, saying, wait a second, you're coming into my area? You're trying to damage the area where my family enjoys and where our land is preserved. So, and this is a misconception I think a lot of Democrats have, that Republicans in rural or ex-urban areas don't care about the environment. I'm telling you, Democrats in Florida could do a lot better electorally if they focused on environmental issues. But again, that's for another time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll be back real soon. We'll be back later in the week.